For centuries, the Book of Revelation and its seven seals, they've been one of history's biggest mysteries, right? It's this epic vision of the apocalypse, of judgment, that has just fascinated people for generations. But what if there was a key hidden inside the book itself? A kind of cipher that could unlock the whole thing and show us the real meaning and sequence of these incredible events. A key that could change how we see the entire prophecy. Well, the source material we're diving into today says that's exactly the case. It argues that the key isn't some lost text. It's a specific and often totally overlooked list of seven essences found right there in the book of Revelation. So here's what we're going to do. First, we'll look at this seven essences key itself. Then, we'll see how it's used to decode the famous four horsemen. After that, we'll dig into the source's symbolic view of the Vatican, its prediction for a fiery fifth seal, and finally, the prophetic timeline it claims we're already living in. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so before we can unlock a single seal, we have to understand the key. This is the absolute foundation of the entire argument. Everything else is built on this one idea. And here it is. This is the verse. Right out of Revelation chapter 5, just before that first seal is even opened, you have millions of angels declaring that the Lamb is worthy to receive these seven specific things: power, riches, wisdom, strength, honor, glory, and blessing. So here's the big idea from our source. This is not just some random list. It's a prophetic roadmap. The theory goes that every time a seal is opened, one of these essences is received by what the author sees as Christ's representative on earth, the Catholic Church. And the order is everything. First seal, first essence. Second seal, second essence. You get the picture. So, does this key actually work? Well, let's put it to the test. Let's apply it to the most famous part of the whole prophecy, the first four seals, aka the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And this chart really lays it all out. Each horseman gets linked to an essence and a huge moment in history. So the first seal, the white horse, is all about the church gaining power under Emperor Constantine. Then you have the second seal, the red horse of war, which is tied to the Crusades bringing in riches. The third seal, the black horse, gets connected to the Renaissance and this explosion of new wisdom. And finally, the fourth seal, that pale horse, that's linked to the world wars, which the source says ultimately brought a strange kind of strength to the faithful. So here's the real kicker. According to this interpretation, we are not sitting around waiting for the four horsemen. The claim is that these first four seals are done. They are fulfilled historical events that have already happened. That brings us to right now and the future. If those first four seals are in the past, the next seals, according to this source, are all about one central player on the world stage, a player who's identified through a kind of symbolic code in the Old Testament. Which, of course, begs the question, where in all those ancient prophecies does the author claim the Vatican is hiding? Well, the answer they give isn't Rome, it's the Forest of Lebanon. And you can see the symbolic logic laid out right here. The name Lebanon actually means white mountain, which is seen as a parallel to the Vatican representing a pure white kingdom. Lebanon was famous for its giant cedars. Well, those are interpreted as symbols for popes and cardinals, the trees of righteousness. And the Bible talks about Lebanon being full of lions and leopards, symbols of royalty, which is seen as a direct match for the spiritual kings and princes of the church. Okay, so let's move on to the fifth seal and see how this symbolic key gets applied to an event that hasn't happened yet. With the Vatican now symbolically identified as Lebanon, a very specific Old Testament prophecy suddenly comes in sharp focus. This verse from the prophet Zechariah, wow. The source interprets this as a direct prophecy against the Vatican. Open thy doors, O Lebanon, that's the Vatican, that the fire may devour thy cedars, its popes and cardinals. It's a pretty direct and honestly chilling prediction. So here's how the author sees it all playing out for the fifth seal. Step 1. A literal fire consumes the Vatican. Step 2. The souls under the altar mentioned in Revelation, those are identified as martyred Catholic clergy. Step 3. As a result of this, the Catholic Mass, what's called the continuous sacrifice, will come to a stop. And through all of this, the fifth essence, honor, is finally received. And that leads us to the final and maybe the most shocking piece of this whole puzzle, a specific timeline. The source argues these events aren't thousands of years away. They're part of a countdown that's already ticking. The whole framework for this countdown is called the last generation. Now, pulling from the book of Genesis, A generation is defined as 120 years, and the author argues this final 120-year period kicked off with the event of the fourth seal, World War I. And this slide just puts it all on a calendar for us. The clock started ticking in 1914. That means we are deep inside that final 120-year window. The author also points to the UN's 2030 agenda as a major milestone to watch. And the math is pretty simple. 1914 plus 120 years takes us to 2034. That's the absolute deadline, according to this source, for all these prophecies to be fulfilled. So let's just recap. The big takeaway here is a totally different way of looking at prophecy. It's not some far-off mystery, but a historical roadmap we're already on. It all starts with that 7-part essences key. That key unlocks the first 4 seals as events in our past, from Constantine all the way to World War II. Then it points to the Vatican as the symbolic Lebanon, setting it up for a fiery 5th seal persecution. And it puts all of this on a clock, a 120-year timeline that, according to this source, is getting very close to its end. Now, whether you agree with this interpretation or not, it's a fascinating way to look at Scripture as a kind of complex, coded message. And it makes you wonder, right? If prophecy really is a code, what other keys might be out there just hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to figure them out?